today's episode of the Brains Byte Back podcast, we speak with Mike Starr, founder and CEO of Tract, a platform that aims to simplify vulnerability management and patch management. In this episode, you'll learn about Mike's journey from being an NSA engineer to entering the startup world, and we also learn about the intriguing story behind the name Tract and how it resonates with both tech enthusiasts and non-nerds alike. I should warn you that Mike does like to swear, so if you got children present, perhaps listen to this a bit later. I hope you enjoy today's episode.
My name is Mike Starr. I'm the founder and CEO of Tract. And what we found is that when most people are going to fix their software vulnerabilities, they're crossing their fingers hoping patches won't break their shit. And so we've built a platform that not only unifies vulnerability management and patch management, but provides insights into how patches have broken other people's shit before you apply it to yours. And this allows operators to automate remediation decisions based on quantifiable metrics, as opposed to qualitatively reason about fear of disruption and safety with arbitrary periods of time.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, thanks for joining me today because you have such an interesting background and I'm really looking forward to picking it apart. Now, I understand you're a former NSA engineer. I'd love to hear how you transitioned from a government employment to the startup world.
Yeah, there's a really long version of this, but ultimately, I met a wickedly intelligent dude at a nerd barbecue in DC. There's a big hub for tech folks and data center space, and that's kind of where my background is. But this guy was on the forefront of software-defined networking when it was in its infancy, and OpenFlow was still a baby. And around the same time, I was closing out 3 major projects at the agency that like largely revolutionized how cyber operations networks were built and operations were conducted. But when I tried to push the envelope further, I ultimately got a pat on the head and was told, like, you've done enough. We need you to lay low for a bit, and burned a bunch of like silver bullets there. And so I asked this dude, I was like, hey man, how do you sell SDN to companies? And his response was like, why don't you just come work for me and I'll double your salary? So I did.
That is a fantastic offer. That's the offer everyone dreams of, I guess.
Right.
Well done. Yeah. And I want to know, like, what's the story behind the name Tract? And I should say for listeners, it's spelled TRACKD.
Yeah, it's a pretty lame one actually. I kept talking about when I was doing interviews for like, is this actually a problem? Like, is this something that like is a market interesting thing, or is it just something I've been dealing with for a decade? I kept saying this intelligent vulnerability management lifecycle system, which is a lot of words. And when I went to create the first GitHub repo, I thought, man, this is too long to be typing and continue saying. And so I was like, well, what the hell am I actually doing with this thing? And I'm like, well, I guess I'm tracking shit. And so I said, well, maybe tracked or tracker or something like this. And for those that are Unix nerds, like a word with a lowercase d at the very end of whatever that word is indicates that there's something running in the background. It's called a daemon. And so I was like, well, let me be cute and just drop the E and we'll call it tracked. And so, Unix nerds will come up to us and say, hey, tell me about track D. And then non-nerds will come up to us and say, hey, tell me about tracked. And funny enough, we consistently get that. And so our marketing guy, anytime someone comes up to the booth and says track D, he'll be like, oh, so you're a big Unix nerd. And they're like, how the hell did you know that? And so it's a great like icebreaker for people coming up to the booth.
That is a fantastic way of, I suppose, understanding where people are coming from immediately. And I think automatically you know that I'm not a Unix nerd, considering that I've already jumped into the category of tracked. So I've learned something new there as well. That's awesome. I also want to say, like, one of the things that we want to discuss primarily on today's show is about the prevalence of bad and wrong information about cybersecurity. And I'd love to know, like, what are some of the worst pieces of cybersecurity advice that you've ever heard?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Air gap networks are a big pet peeve of mine. An air gap network is essentially something that's not connected to the internet in any fashion. And on the superficially, you'd say, well, that sounds right? Like you just unconnect everything, disconnect all the shit from the internet, inbound or outbound connectivity, and I'm safe, right? Well, not really. There's plenty of examples of malware popping into air gap networks. If you or the listenership is curious to understand, one example of this is Stuxnet. There's a couple books on that. That's an interesting read. But yeah, air gap networks don't work, and so anytime I hear someone talk about them, I get angry. But I think my biggest bone to pick in general is just the lack of consideration given to the operational effort and risk in enacting security policies and procedures. Or like security only cares about cyber risk, and either don't give any mind to, or just are completely ignorant of the operational risk in this in actually mitigating cyber risk. And so like there's a bunch of major initiatives right now, like get rid of all your passwords, just patch all your vulnerabilities, deny everything by default, and only allow what's absolutely necessary. Like all of those things require an inordinate amount of effort and time and risk to the business, that security folks don't have to think about. And so that's really the wrong information or the bad like advice in cybersecurity, is taking a generic like paintbrush and saying just do this thing in general without any understanding of the nuance and like nuance of companies, people in them, the business. What is the business actually doing? And I see a lot of like generic advice on, well, if you just deploy a bunch of firewalls, or you just get rid of VPN, or you just do blah. Well, it's like there's no context for like what the hell does the business actually care about? What are they doing? How do the people operate the business? What do they do? Like what are the things that go into these decisions? And so I would say just generic shitty cyber advice, just ignore it.
Okay, that makes sense. And I have to say, while we're speaking about this, it's come to mind. I'm also curious to know, like, what is some of the best cybersecurity advice you've heard, or maybe an easier way of saying it, what's some of the best cybersecurity advice you could give?
Really, it comes down to understanding like what matters to you, what matters to the business, what matters to the team, understanding the group. And it's kind of sounds like this like kumbaya bullshit, but really it comes down to who's on the team, what are the stakeholders, and truly understanding like what are the problems that you have, what are you solving for, what are the things you're afraid of, and then building, you call it a quote unquote building a plan. It sounds ominous, it sounds boring, it sounds difficult, but really the plan is like, do we have a bunch of branch offices that only have digital nomads or whatever and just have laptops? Do we actually need a VPN? Do we actually need a firewall? Do we actually need printers? Like understanding what, like the best advice that I can give is like understand and this is not just cyber, it's just engineering in general, is like understand the problem you're trying to solve for, uh, truly understand it before telling people just go do the thing.
Okay, cool. No, thank you for sharing that. And I also have to say, I've checked out your website and I saw recently that you folks published an article on your blog titled Consider the Human Factor in Cyber Breaches. Now, based on this article and your own knowledge, what advice do you have for listeners looking to stop cyber breaches, and how can they address the human factor?
Yeah, I won't get on my quote unquote preventing cyber attacks soapbox, because it's just unrealistic, especially given the current state of affairs in the cyber landscape. But the human factor, part of your question, now that's damn interesting. The really the human factor is just realizing that security and IT or operations or infrastructure, whatever you want to call them, and everyone else that's involved in this, all the other stakeholders, we're on the same damn team. And don't get me wrong, like I've been guilty of this most of my career where I've been a security weenie, I've been an infrastructure weenie, and multiple times across multiple companies, and each time my perspective was, well, why don't those assholes in IT just do their job? Or if only those jerks in security actually knew how to do anything but run an SS or a burp scan. uh, and in those programs, like we never got really anything done. And now there's a bunch of things that go into this, but when you realize like just one of the major contributors to this mindset, this combative mindset as opposed to a collaborative one, is just a lack of context. Like you can start to understand why you're being asked, quote unquote stupid questions from security, like, hey, the CVE just came out, are we affected? Or why can't we just patch everything in the maintenance window you already have tonight? or what seems like, indifference or unmotivated IT folks just pushing back on security with, I'll get to it when I get to it, or what's your ticket number? Do you even have a ticket number? And the human factor is just exactly what it sounds like. Just treat humans like humans, not roadblocks or obstacles that you need to bulldoze and get out of your way to get your shit done. And really, I believe that there are two main influences on an organization that prevent collaboration and reward conflict. And the first is pretty obvious, right? It's just assholes, right? In leadership and day-to-day operators, just being assholes. And we have a strong no assholes policy at Tract, and as a result, the team is just hands down the best I've ever worked with, the pleasure of working with. And there's no egos. We get shit done. People help each other. No one's afraid to say I don't know, and we work to resolve things together. But people that are not aligned with like looking at the community as a whole or the business as a whole, like we're in this together, is one major source for this thing. And it's really hard to change human behaviors. And I've staked my career on doing that and have been somewhat successful in doing so, and will continue to push that envelope forward. But the second one is a little less obvious and more difficult to address, and it's that vendors perpetuate this false dichotomy, especially between the IT and the security teams, right? Like the culture in general in an enterprise is like you're either on the security team or you're not, and it's just bullshit. But they perpetuate this dichotomy, either false dichotomy, either purposefully or just in ignorance between teams, because it's just easier to sell into a single business unit. And so if you look at all the major IT uh, uh, software on the market today, it only solves for IT stuff. And if you look at the security tools, it only solves for security stuff. But when you realize that, security cares about cyber risk and IT cares about operational risk, and one is like only having one is worse than useless. It's this main source of frustration between these two teams, and the adversaries clearly have a leg up. And so if you can start to bridge this gap between these two teams and the tools that they use to say, to start having questions like, instead of like, hey, go patch that shit, to like, hey, y'all, like this new vuln is available or actively being exploited. They're targeting financial institutions. We're a financial institution. And, it seems like, on Twitterverse or Reddit or whatever else, like this patch, this patch hasn't really broken anything. There's no really crazy stuff on Twitter or whatever. Can we patch this more aggressively? Like, you start to have these kinds of conversations that start from a place of collaboration as opposed to combativeness. And that's really what the human factor is. And it sounds like kumbaya-ish, blah, blah, blah. But, you hear a lot of lip service around cybersecurity is a people problem first. And it's only lip service, right? Like what tool actually, or what group of tools actually focuses on like truly fundamentally human bottlenecks or human conditions first, right? They don't really exist in the market.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. And I also, I'm not gonna lie, I did very much laugh. I had myself on mute, which is good because I laughed when you were saying about the no arseholes policy. I could just imagine going to your careers page and just looking at a job and like capital letters, no arseholes. Arseholes need not apply.
That
But
will
yeah, that
absolutely be a headline when we have a careers page on Tract. It will be there. I guarantee you that.
fantastic. I love that. And obviously, like you mentioned, there you've got your when your careers page comes up. That sounds like it's going to be something that's going to be in the future. I mean, what else is on the future? Like, what else is on the horizon for you folks at Tract?
Yeah, our goal, at least for this half of the year, is to expand our network and install base. We've had our private beta open since March. We've got a bunch of folks on the platform, multi-$100 billion market cap companies to really tiny law firms. And really, we're just trying to, like, our focus is just eliminating vulnerabilities in the enterprise, and we're building out these tools and in these features that help people reason about patches and vulnerability management in a similar way that they reason about it today, but with a few behavioral tweaks to actually start solving for this problem. And so one of those things is proving to our user base that auto patching is generally safe, and when it's not, we'll let you know. Less than 2% of patches are ever rolled back, but you're not going to play Russian roulette with your critical systems, right? So you apply this fine-tooth comb to every patch, and so it's why, on average, you can only patch, even fairly mature vulnerability management programs only get to patch 10% of the vulnerabilities that afflict their enterprise. So we're working towards being able to quantify fear of uncertainty, and declare what safe means to them, giving metrics that actually matter, given the practice of vulnerability management and patch management. And so that's our big focus is getting people to realize that patching is generally safe, and then building these kind of guardrails to allow them to roll out patches in a way that aligns with their corporate risk strategy, the patch's known impact, but most importantly, the operator's life. Right? Like, if they patch tonight, are they going to miss a Tinder date? They're going to miss their daughter's recital, or they patch too fast at the urging of an existing executive, only to come back in the next day and then be yelled at for causing downtime by that same asshole.
That's good. That's very considerate, and I am really excited to see how you folks develop. And if people are listening to this and they want to keep up with the work that you are doing, what's the best way for them to do that, Mike?
Yeah, head over to track.com. There's a form you can do, Ask Me Anything, or you can just reach out to me on LinkedIn or at my email. It's mike@track.com, trackd.com, and happy to chat.
Growing a company has many hurdles, from securing funding to expanding your business capabilities to ranking better on search. Each business challenge is uniquely complex. The solution to these challenges is growth-focused digital PR and marketing, and that is where our sponsor, Publicize, comes in. Publicize sets itself apart from traditional PR companies. It does not charge large retainers or churns out press releases whether you've got a newsworthy announcement or not. Publicize builds businesses' online presence and gets high-quality PR and media coverage for startups and entrepreneurs who are priced out of a broken PR industry. What's more, listeners of Brains Byte Back can find the tools and resources they need to overcome common hurdles that many startups face when trying to generate long-term growth by visiting publicize.co/BBB. That's publicize.co/BBB. That is it for today's episode. Thank you for joining us. I hope you've learned something, and if you have benefited from today's episode, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast, as these reviews really help us grow the show. You can also follow us wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Just search Brains Byte Back and you will find us. We hope you join us for more episodes in the future, and until then, take care.